Hello guys, been a long time, but I'm really stoked to be telling you some great news. Barons War, one of the greatest games I've ever got into, but this is dead. This is first edition. Consign this to the bring and buy stand at your local gaming show. What we've got now is Barons War 2, second edition. Now I know it's not quite as impressive because it's on my PDF, but that's because that's the only copy I've got at the moment. I haven't got a physical copy because it hasn't been printed yet. If you scan down, I will look at this bit here. It will actually tell you some playtesters' names, and there's me, and there's also Bart, the man behind the camera. So that's why we've got access to this before you lot did, right? We've been playtesting it for about a year, and when you playtest games, it's really annoying because you've got all these new exciting things that are in your head. You have to split your brain in two because you're playing games of the old edition with your mates, and then you're playtesting the new edition. So all that's now gone. I can now tell you what's in the new edition. So in the next few minutes, I will let you know what the differences are. Right, so what stayed the same? It's a good game, so you didn't need to change everything. They haven't thrown the baby out with the bathwater. It's very much the game you know and love, right? The heart's still there. It's still a small-scale medieval skirmish game. It's units, you dice for initiative, and then it's alternate activations. That bit hasn't changed. It's still the trusty die 10s to attack with and die 6s to show the morale penalties. That's still there. Groups get an activation, one around, and then your commanders can use some of their actions to give out other commands. So that bit hasn't changed at all. What has changed is this edition is far clearer, it's less clunky, and some of the experiences within, say, combat are less janky. There's things in the old game that would make you think, oh, that's not very intuitive. Well, that's changed. Andy and co have spent a long time making this flow. It's a much more polished game, and I think you're going to love it. So one of the big changes is in the language that is used. So there's some semantic changes and some changes in terminology. So for instance, one of the semantic changes is when it comes to what used to be called morale dice. Right? These are the ones that you drop behind your units when you've taken casualties. It's still there, but it did get quite confusing sometimes with the term dice because people think you roll dice. So no, these aren't called morale dice, they're called morale penalties, which really illustrates what they're there for, right? They reduce your chance to pass morale tests. So that's a semantic change. There's also terminology changes. So if you've got a broken group, you have to do that first. And so they've broken up that first phase for each player into what's called a compulsory action phase, where you must do those units that are broken to see if you can rally them, and then a new action phase. And they make it quite clear that one player can be in the compulsory phase whilst the others have moved on to the action phase. The other thing is they've removed some of the things that got quite confusing in a game. And one of the biggest things was the difference between broken and shocked. People would always get confused between what was a broken unit, what was a shocked unit, what you could do to them, what their modifications were if you attack them. That's simplified. There's no shocked. There's just broken. And in the past, you used to roll for whether you're broken at 25% casualties. You don't now. It's at 50% casualties. So once you take that magic 50, from then on, you're into morale tests. So that's a terminological, get the word right? Terminological change. One of the big changes that's really going to help new players is the way that bonuses apply to dice. In the past, when you were modifying dice, if you were improving it, you were actually reducing the number that you were trying to get, which is a bit counterintuitive. So any bonuses now that apply help you by adding to your roll rather than reducing the number that you're trying to get to. It's purely semantic, but it really does help in that sort of intuitive, if I'm getting a bonus, it's giving me an add, not a take away. Coherency. In the past, coherency for infantry was you'd have to be in a bubble that was within 2 inches of a centre figure. So these would be in coherency, and you'd just about get an extra one in, and that's just about a 5-inch bubble. That does restrict the amount of warriors you can get in a group. What's happened now, it's a little bit looser, so there's still the bubble. You pick somebody to be in the middle, and only part of your base needs to be within 2 inches of the edge of the guy in the middle. So it does mean you can be a little bit looser and your groups can be a little bit bigger. It's 2 inches again for infantry and 3 inches for cavalry. That bit hasn't changed. As before, each group has one action. A commander can give them an order to take another action. This bit hasn't changed. They've just made it much clearer in as much as that it doesn't matter how many orders you're given, you can only do 2 actions. That's the max anybody can do. Commanders can give more orders to people and use up their actions that way, but they themselves can only do 2 actions in a turn. Combat has changed a little bit. There is a new flowchart which sets out the steps in a far more logical way and easy to follow way. And a big change, probably the biggest when it comes to combat, is with hindering with missile fire. So one criticism of the old version is that you could get some really, really strange things going on that just didn't feel very intuitive at all. So the old rules on line of sight were that if these guys here were behind the building, let's put them over here, but you could just see one guy poking out, and if you could draw a line of sight from this guy to this guy, that's an unhindered shot. So all of these archers would be able to shoot at all of these spearmen, even though most of them are hidden behind a building and you can't see them, with an unhindered shot. That never felt right, always felt a bit weird, very clanky, and that's all been resolved now. So in the past, hindering would, for everything that was hindering you, you would lose a dice. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 archers here. In the past, if you were hindered by one thing, this log, you would lose a dice. What happens now is instead of losing the amount of dice, it makes the target number harder to reach. So if these guys here are hitting on a 6 and they're shooting across this one log at these spearmen here, then instead of hitting on a 6, they would be hitting on a 7. If 50% of them are shooting over something that's hindering them, it reduces their chance to hit by making the target number 1 more. Far more intuitive, far more realistic. And the other thing that they've added with that is that if you can only see 2 people, because the rest are behind the building, then you can only kill 2 people, which again is far more intuitive. Highly recommended change, very thankful for that. Another change to missile is this. In the past, if one guy was in range, then all of them were in range. That's slightly different now. And it allows you to accommodate if some things are in short range, some things are in long range. So I've set this up here, so we've got 2 archers are actually within 10, which is half range, and the others are just over there into 11. So what you would do Now again, very intuitive. You split it up into two pools. So you've got some that are shooting at short range, they're on 6s, and the ones that are shooting at long ranges are on 7. There's a change to line of sight as well now. In the past, it used to be a corridor that was a base width wide. That's much simpler now in the fact that it's just a straight line between the centre of the guy that's shooting and the guy who's shooting at. So centre to centre. If you cross 2 or 3 things, each is hindering. In the old rules, if you went over 2 things, that would block line of sight. Now it doesn't. It just makes the shot harder each time. So if these needed a 6, shooting over that, it would need a 7. Shooting over that, it would need an 8, then a 9. So it just makes the shot progressively more difficult. Morale penalties are still there. Right? So when you charge in, there's a modifier that makes a difference to the combat. In the past, it was simply on the amount of dice you get to roll. That's been expanded out now. So if there's a difference in 1, if these monks with a morale penalty of 1 are charging these spearmen with a morale penalty of 2, the difference is 1. When they charge in, a difference of 1, instead of giving an extra dice, attack dice, what it does is it now gives a re-roll. So that there's a table and it broadens out so that the bigger the difference, the more effect it has on the combat. A minor difference like that doesn't give too much, it just gives a re-roll. With hand-to-hand, another thing that they've added in is, in the past, if you were in charge range, so it's 6 for these monks, if they were within their charge range, they wouldn't need to make a charge roll on a die 6. This is the dice that you roll to add how much further your movement is when you're charging in. So if you were within, you didn't do it. Now everybody does it. It doesn't matter whether you are within your movement or not, you still roll. And it's the same result as in edition 1. If you roll a 1, you're losing an attack dice. If you roll a 6, you're gaining 1. Let's talk zeros. Zeros in edition 1 were criticals. Criticals, if you attack and roll a 0, not only is it an automatic hit, the only way to defend against it was rolling a 0 on your defense dice. That, although it's exciting, could throw up some real janky results. If you'd got, say, green levy hitting on 9s because they're weary, it means that any 9s and 10s that they get are hits, but it means half of them, the 10s, are going to be criticals. Whereas if you were a knight hitting on a 4, you'd only be getting criticals, a fraction of your hits. That just didn't seem right. So again, to fit the general philosophy of this new edition, zeros are automatic hits, but they're not criticals. That's gone. There is some leftover criticals, but they become abilities now. So the most useful example is crossbowmen. So to compensate the fact that crossbows used to cause shock quite a bit at close range, what happens now is that at short range, their zeros still count as criticals, and the same applies to defend against the crossbow bolts. At short range, you need a 0 to counteract the zeros. And that is even better for crossbowmen now, because that only applied to guys in mail before. Now, everybody, doesn't matter what you're wearing, you get hit with a crossbow bolt, it's a pretty nasty thing. Force back, that's changed. In the past, both for missile shooting and for hand-to-hand, for every casualty you took, you would go back an inch plus 1 inch. So if you took 2 casualties, you'd be going back 3 inches. Simplified it down, it's just 1 inch back for every casualty you take. Let's imagine these scary monks have just charged in, bashing the spearmen with their Bibles, poking them with their crucifixes, and they managed to kill 2 of them. Now you can take casualties anywhere you like now. So let's say we've taken 2 casualties off here, and they need to be pushed back 2 inches away from the monks. So that takes them to this fence. If they'd have lost 3 and needed to go back 3 inches, to cross the fence, they need 2 inches. For infantry to cross an obstacle, it's 2 inches. So if they're being pushed back 3, they've only got 1 inch to try and get over that fence, which means they can't do it. So they would be caught and trapped. Still applies. So that means you would lose another casualty. If they were pushed back 4 inches though, they'd be able to clear this and be the other side. And you never split it. They're either over the fence or they're not over the fence. One of the really exciting things, I loved this when I saw this in the rules, is they've expanded your reactions. So there is the traditional defense reaction. So if you haven't acted yet, you can use your action to react to something that's happening. So if these archers were shooting at these sergeants here and they haven't acted yet, then they could declare a defense. You plop that down, and what that does is it increases their armor save. So they're in padded armor, which is a save of 6. It increases it by 2, so they'd be saving on a 4. And you push them in nice and tight as they form a shield wall. That's still there. That bit hasn't changed. Another reaction is that if you are assaulted, so these monks are charging the cavalry, they're attacking, the cavalry can elect to counterattack, to fight back. So that reaction is still there. Right? They've added exciting news and added 2 really interesting reactions that can now be done, both of which make 100% sense. One is to shoot back. So if these archers are shooting at these archers, that's their action. They shoot, which is one of these, and then their reaction can be to shoot back. As long as you're in short range. If you're at long range you can't, but if you're in short range, which these guys are, you can just shoot back. Makes loads of sense. And then the one I really do like is this. If these archers are about to be charged by these sergeants here, instead of just standing there and taking it, they can actually react by shooting at the sergeants as they're charging in, which I'm sure you will agree is a far more realistic and intuitive thing to add into the game. There are some provisos. If the unit charging you starts too close, so within their movement, they're wearing padding, so their movement's 5. So if they were in 5, you wouldn't be able to react. They're just starting their run up to you a bit too soon and you haven't got time to do anything. If, however, they're further away, then you can get a shot at them as they're coming in. The beauty being as well is it's like normal combat. So if you manage to kill one, then they have a pushback of 1 inch, which then means their charge plus their dice roll to get in now has a casualty to be taken into account, and they might not reach you. So you might be able to stop them getting to you by shooting 1 or 2. And if you shoot enough, they need a morale check. which means they might not want to charge you in the first place. That, I think, is a great thing to have within the game, makes it far more realistic, and gives you that extra bit to do with your missile troops, rather than just stand there and wait for the sergeants to come in and pummel them to death. So guys, one change that has happened when it comes to reactions is that spears have changed. Spears, lances and bills. In the first edition rules, if these spearmen charged into the knights would not be able to counterattack, because you could only counterattack a long reach weapon like a spear or a lance is if you'd got a spear or a lance. That's not there now. So the difference is, if these charge in, the knights can counterattack. Where spears have changed is that in the combat rules, it's still those in contact generate an attack dice, plus anybody within an inch of somebody fighting. So that normally gives a second row, right? Whereas now with spears, you've got a 2-inch reach. So you don't need to be within an inch to attack. You can be within 2 inches. So spears have lost something in the counterattack, but they have gained in the fact that you can bring far more to bear. And I think that actually makes spears far more historically useful in how they were employed. So you can have your 2, 3, possibly even 4 ranks of guys fighting with spears. Makes them very useful. Huge change to commanders. It's probably one of the biggest changes within the game. Now your commanders are a little bit more vulnerable, right? So we have a situation here. We've got some knights. They're in hand to hand with some sergeants that have just piled in. If you've got your commander who's often rolling a bit better than the other guys, right? So his chance to hit is probably a bit lower. So let's imagine he's on a 3 to hit and the other guys are on 4s to hit. If you put him in the front row, then he's adding his dice in and he hits on the 3. And the others, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're hitting on 4s. All right, so you drop that. So we've got a fair few hits in there. All of them bar 1, in fact, right? So he's hit. And he might have a different weapon, as well as a different chance to hit. What that means is that he has killed the guy in front of him, right? So you can add that in. But in the return set of hits, if he gets hit and he's in the front row and he fails his armour and defence roll and his shield roll, he's dead. You've lost him. Right? There's none of this take other people out first. If he's in the front row and he gets killed, tough. What you could decide to do is put him in the second row supporting. He's a bit safer there, he can't get killed. But he adds a dice in, but he doesn't add it in with all his benefits. His extra chance to hit, his extra abilities, anything like that, that's not included. He's just adding a dice. He's there to support, not fight in the front rank. So you've got a decision to make. Do you want to get him in there with all his fancy abilities and better chance to hit, or are you going to keep him safe? On top of that, we got more changes. Let's imagine this is a Baron. Normally he has 3 actions. He's charged in, he's got 2 left. What he can do now is he can use any of these to either give him an extra dice in attack, burn it to give him an extra dice in attack, or he could burn them to give him an extra dice in defence. So that means he can be the superhero that's diving in there, having multi-attacks and smashing things down. but it's going to cost him his actions to do it. Another cool use of your actions if you're a commander. In the past, in edition 1, you have this situation where it's your main commander that issues orders. If you've got a backup commander, a second in command, who's not your retinue commander, who's just a commander, he's been able to use his extra actions for himself, but he hasn't been able to use them to give orders. That's changed slightly, because now what he can do is he can't order somebody to do something, another group, but he can order them to react. So let's imagine this situation here. We've got some knights about to charge in on some archers. The archers have already acted this turn, so they've shot at somebody else. What can happen now is that this commander here, he's within command range. He can burn his extra action to order these to react with shooting the knights as they're charging in. Same rules apply in that these guys need to take an order test, which is a morale test, to accept that order. But it does mean your second in command is a bit more useful now. He isn't just using his extra action for himself all the time. Correctly place him somewhere, then he can actually give that extra reaction to a unit that needs it. Changes in this new edition. And one of the big changes is on their upgrades. So the upgrades that you're used to are still there. So unit of knights, there's the commander. When you buy him, you can upgrade by buying a banner, a priest, a musician. And then when you put him in a group, it converts 4 knights into 1 knight and the priest and the banner bearer and the musician, right? So that upgrade is still there, but how the upgrades function is a little bit different. So the differences, let's take them one at a time. The banner. So if he is a baron, it extends his command range from 6 inches to 12. If he's a lord, it's not a banner, it's a pennant, and it extends it from 6 inches to 9. That bit's not different. What is different is this. Without any form of banner or flag, the 6 inches is measured from him, and it's line of sight. So that if there was a building in the way, these guys wouldn't be in command range. So 6 inches. The moment that you use some sort of pennant or banner, that's what these guys are looking for. In medieval battles, you know where the boss is because you're looking for his flag, right? So now it's measured from the flag, not from the man. That can make a difference if, for instance, you can't see the banner, but you can see the man. They're looking for his flag, they're not looking for him. So they haven't got line of sight to where the command bit is now measured from, which is the banner. So that's quite a structural change that you need to be aware of, or otherwise it'll grab you by the short and curly, so to speak. So you need to make sure that if you're going to upgrade with a pennant or a flag, that needs to be seen. You need to make sure that the people have got line of sight to that. So that's that upgrade. The next upgrade is the musician. Musicians, when you're giving an order, instead of rolling 1 dice, you're rolling 2 and you pick the best. That bit hasn't changed. But again, what's very good in this set of rules is it's trying to unify sort of ideas. So again, with the musician, rather than measuring it like you would in the past from the commander's range, it's the musician that's blowing his trumpet, right? So you're actually measuring it now from him, not from the Lord or the Baron. And then the final one, and probably the one that might upset a few people, is the priest. Priests in version 1 became ubiquitous, right? You'd have them in every command group. Why wouldn't you? You had a priest because if you were in command range of the boss, then having a priest would mean that you can ignore any morale penalties on you. So you might have 5 on you, right? But if you're within command range of a priest, all of those penalties would be ignored. I always thought that was a bit excessive. And as far as my historical knowledge goes, not every lord and baron on the battlefield would have a priest riding around with him. So they have answered that by really, I suppose the word is nerfing. The priest is now nerfed considerably, right? So now he doesn't get you to ignore all your morale penalties. He just reduces them by 1. And that's if you're within 6 inches. Forget the commander's range. It's within 6 inches of the priest. So his bubble of reducing your morale penalty down is only 6 inches, and it's only knocking you down by 1. The power of prayer is not quite so good in this edition. But one benefit that it does do that it didn't do before is that the commander would in the past never benefit from his ability, but the priest now does benefit the commander. So if the commander's got say 3 or morale penalties on him, then having the priest either within his group or nearby is going to knock it down to 2.